And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode 31. Well, we've rounded out our first calendar month of Aerostars with this video, and for posterity's sake, we have 1 month of Aerostars to show, as we will end the month with a really nice one here. As you saw in the last video, we're doing sort of a couple high-dollar Aerostars, more stuff on the upper echelon, the upper crust of Aerostardom. I just coined something there, didn't I? Today we're using Auto Tempest, a great site to compare all of the websites, Facebook, Craigslist, Cars.com, blah, blah, blah. I don't know who uses Cars.com without using Auto Tempest anymore. No shade against Cars.com. But it is a great, great website, Auto Tempest. They do not sponsor me, but if they would like to sponsor me, please get in touch. My rates are far less than some of the other YouTubers. All right, so here we have, just on a broad search, I have found this wonderful 1992 Ford Aerostar. Now, this is a special one. As you can see, it's listed for $14,999. Whew, quite pricey. Almost $5,000 more than the 1986 Aerostar we looked at last time, which is an absolutely amazing, immaculate condition with very low miles as well, only 75,000. So what commands a $15,000 price on an Aerostar? Well, this one is listed as having only 35,050 miles, and it is listed in Chicago, Illinois. So we will go to the Cars.com website and see some of these beautiful pictures. Now this is a striking white Aerostar, and it is an extended edition Aerostar. I was just talking about the lack of extended edition Aerostars and how I'd like to see more of them. So we have a beautiful, just sort of very basic Aerostar here in all its glory. I love that it has this white with this sort of black and silver pinstriping on it. Can zoom in here a little bit. It's got the great, shades of gray thing going on, because it's got your gray bumper with your black insert, your dark gray grille, your black tires, your silver hubcaps, your silver and black pinstripe, your black mirrors, black door handles, and then this white everything else. And it certainly does strike a nice pose. It looks very much like sort of a not a cargo Aerostar, because that connotes specifically barn doors in the back, but it looks like some sort of service or utility Aerostar. Very sort of bare bones, very sort of in more of the hauling of goods rather than hauling of people parameters of the Aerostar. A nice contrast to last episode, because that one had all the bells and whistles and all the luxury accoutrement, whereas this one is a little bit more basic. As we'll look through some of our pictures, I do love on the extended version too this very, very long rear bumper, which dips down here very nicely to allow for a low entry point for putting materials in the back. It really does have a very low shelf to, you don't have to lift things super high to get things in. That's the thing that SUVs brag about. And I would imagine this is quite lower than most modern SUVs of the height if you actually have to lift something to get it in the back. Just another feather in the Aerostar's cap. Looks like we do have a window tint here, and I can't tell if it's a purple DIY window tint, but it very well may be. It does look like it has a little bit of purplish going on. Now, boom! I just hit you with a lot of stuff all at once here. This is incredible, because what we have here, the thing that jumps out right away, is that we have a manual transmission in this Aerostar. And that, while being alone very noteworthy, is combined with the fact that it is an extended length Aerostar. And a manual transmission extended length Aerostar is extremely rare. This is a rare bird indeed. This is very, very cool, and this whole spec is very, very cool, because the other thing that we'll note is that you have the vinyl seats. Now, vinyl seats a lot of times came in cargo Aerostars or utility Aerostars. The cool thing about the Aerostar was you could have it spec'd almost any which way. So this does not have barn doors. It has a rear lift gate. Many of the cargo versions had the vinyl seats, but they would have the barn doors. So this has your rear lift gate, but it does still have the vinyl seats. And these are like basically like little bucket seats here, like little sports car seats. Now in the very early Aerostars, like the 86 Aerostar that I sold my buddy Evan, the seats don't even come up this high. They're basically without even like a headrest. They're like, they really look like sports car seats from like an old Mustang in the 60s or something like that. These do have a headrest, but they are not the traditional seats you see in an Aerostar where they're cloth and they're two-tone. These have more vertical stitch patterns in them, and they don't have the big giant headrest that has the big hole in the middle, the classic 80s very nice seat. These are just sort of more of a run-of-the-mill vinyl standard seat. Certainly comfortable enough and also extremely functional. You know, they almost mimic like a leather, but they'll hold up a little bit better to wear and tear. Stains aren't going to affect them as much as they would a cloth seat. So what an interesting combination. A manual transmission, vinyl seats, a rear lift gate as opposed to barn doors, and an extended length. Just that alone should make this Aerostar very, very worthy of a high price because it is extremely rare. And obviously it looks in fantastic condition. And then combining that is that we only have 35,000 miles listed on the odometer here, which is absolutely crazy. Now this is your post-facelift interior. It's funny that it went from actually a digital gauge cluster back to an analog gauge cluster, probably just a little bit more reliable, and the digital gauge clusters were a little bit less in vogue going into the 90s as opposed to the 80s. But I really like this gauge cluster. It's very simple. You have your information here laid out very nicely, and it's just a little bit, you know, more modern. I really like the second generation interior that they did on these. It's very, you know, pretty plain Jane, pretty Spartan, but everything's just been a little bit updated. Everything's a little sleeker. Everything, you just get the sense that it's a little bit better made and a little bit more functional and hardy. Your glove compartment got bigger, and some of those things. You also have a wonderful center console that came out in a lot of these when the interior was updated, because in the first generation, it just like there's just nothing between the seats, and if you want to put a cup holder or something in there, it's a little bit of a challenge. These have this beautiful center console, a little waterfall design here, swooping down there with a little cup holder, and still plenty of room for your transmission, and also some fold away storage there. So I really do like the second generation interior. Obviously love the first pre-facelift interior too, and that's very classic in its own right. But when they updated the interior, I feel like it just got a little bit more modern and could function a little bit better as a you know, daily driver today. I also love the second generation steering wheel. I've raved about the steering wheel. I love the horn buttons, very easy access. And the wheel itself, I just think is a very classic, nice design. A 4-spoke wheel, very simple, very elegant. I love your stamped Ford logo in here. And this steering wheel they put in absolutely everything, from Mercury Capri sports cars. I believe some Mustangs may have even gotten this wheel. I may be wrong about that. Maybe I think some of the Fox body Mustangs got this wheel. Broncos, they put it in everything, which I love. Again, I've said this before, but you know, cars get derided as being part spin cars, where they're just taking what they have and fitting it in there to like save money. But I think you know, that's just good design. If you can make something versatile that can work well in everything, you know, everything doesn't need to be bespoke per se. And I love that this steering wheel, I would be interested to know which vehicle this wheel featured in first. Probably honestly the Mustang, because I think the Fox bodies came out in like 83, whereas these didn't come out till 86. So we have a bevy of pictures to get through here, but I think I'm going to go directly to the dealer's website, which is Elite Auto Corp in Chicago, Illinois. The funny thing is they say, you know, unfortunately there's not much of a description on this vehicle. Vehicle details, in order for us to contact you, please leave a detailed voicemail, smiley face. We do not finance. Thank you. And then right after they say they don't finance, we have a payment calculator, which is funny here. But that's just probably because these are like sort of standard template websites. No shade, just thought that was funny. So this Aerostar certainly is elite. So, you know, it makes sense that they would be selling it. Again, a manual transmission. Once upon a time I saw a manual transmission extended length Aerostar in Texas, and it was the cargo actually with the barn doors. I'll never forget it. And it was like, $1,400 or something like that, and fairly low mileage. And I wish I had purchased that. I can't imagine, like, driving a standard transmission Aerostar is fun enough, but with that extra, 2 feet or so on the back end of it, I just can imagine just driving that thing around and feeling, rowing through those gears and feeling the torque pushing that thing down the road would be quite an enjoyable experience. Again, let's get some pictures back up here. I wonder if this will be easier to navigate than the cars.com site. Definitely got some purple tint going on here in your tint job. Now here's a great picture here of the funny thing is, again, this is a cargo kind of spec, but it still has the rear liftgate, and you still do have a rear bench seat, which is very funny. And even the rear bench seat is done in vinyl. So it's very funny that Ford did this. It looks like it is the standard Aerostar seat. You can see where the two-tone would have been, but they just covered it in a monochromatic vinyl. So certainly a very interesting spec. So how do I get out of these pictures? There we go. Again, so this is another fascinating thing, is this Aerostar with the manual transmission, once they sort of everything switched over after like 89 to 90 to 91, the interior got facelifted, the actual transmission stock changed too, and I'm wondering if the transmission itself is different, because I know there were 2 different manual transmission options, or not options per se, but there were 2 different manual transmissions offered in the Aerostar at different years. Both Mazda units, but I think they may have gotten a slightly updated Mazda unit for these later ones, and I'm guessing that's why it has a different shift handle on it. Mine is a little bit more squared off, and my shift handle almost has like sort of a kink in it, and it's a little skinnier, whereas this one is sort of one long straight stalk, and the handle is a bit different. Mine is more like sort of squared off. This one is more round. I gotta say, I really like the second generation shift handle and shift knob, and I would love to get a later manual transmission Aerostar and compare it to mine just on feel and how it goes through the gears and all that. Boy, here we have, so you can just see there's a rear bench seat already in this Aerostar, and you still have this cavernous amount of room. I mean, imagine if you took that bench seat out of there. So this is actually a good setup. Looks like there isn't a second bench in here, but one bench seat in there, you can still fit 5 people and have all this cargo room. So just an amazing amount of space to use in this van. Looks like it does have the 3-liter V6, which is no surprise, because the 4.0, as we're seeing, is pretty rare. Now, this is the funny thing. That last video, it really does look like the 3.0 block in there, but it has a totally different airbox than this one does. Your intake there. So I really wonder what's going on with that. I kind of can't get my mind off that. I apologize. You'll have to go watch the last video and it'll make more sense to you. We'll get into the Carfax in a second, because this does have a Carfax, but you can just see how clean this Aerostar is underneath. And I think that's because this spent basically its entire life in California, even though it's being sold in Illinois now. So I'm wondering how they came across it. Yeah, you even have a California license plate still on it. Just a wonderfully preserved Aerostar. I really like the extended versions. They've been growing on me quite a bit lately. And of course, in addition to the vinyl seats, you have your crank windows too. So the 86 we saw had these door cards in here with your deluxe cloth and your sort of leather trimming in red with your door cards and your power windows and all this stuff. This is much more dressed down. This is much more Spartan, plain Jane, crank windows, vinyl seats. I quite like it. I gotta say, I really like the simplicity of this Aerostar. You do have, it looks like it is a DIY window tint, because it looks like it's starting to peel up a little bit there. I have a whole thing about purple DIY window tints. Why are they always purple? I don't get it. Please leave us a detailed voicemail in order for us to contact you. I may have to leave them a detailed voicemail. And the other thing I like about this website is you can make an offer. So perhaps I can make them an offer. But, this is funny because it has such low mileage, but it doesn't have all sort of the flair or the panache of the last one we looked at, the 86. So this would be seen as much less of a classic. This would almost be something someone would use as a daily driver, but it's hard to justify buying a car from 1992 for $15,000. That being said, you're going to get pretty decent gas mileage, probably close to 20 miles per gallon. You're going to have a ton of room. So even though it's hard to justify buying such an old car, trying to find something similar this big that will do this much for you and be this capable is going to be hard to find at $15,000. So I don't think the price is really that unfair or that reasonable. And again, the manual transmission, just otherworldly. It's a very, very strange spec. I really, really like it. I'm really, really into this Aerostar. So we have to look at the Carfax. Show me the Carfax. Now this is the interesting thing about it. Okay, there is an accident reported, last owned in California. I'm trying to remember if they say anything else about how many owners it's had. Let's go up here for a second. Excuse me. Exit out of the pictures here. Okay, so the spec's white, rear-wheel drive, and that's the other thing. Now I don't think they made manual transmission all-wheel drive Aerostars. I've basically ruled that out as an option. That was probably the only two things you couldn't combine. I've never seen one, and it would make sense to me that with the transfer case and the manual transmission, that Ford wouldn't have gone to those lengths to engineer that. So at least one accident or damage recorded. So we really don't have much information about this at all. But let's look at the Carfax here, and we'll do a little Aerostar sleuthing and see some interesting things about this one. So again, it says it's only have 35,000 miles. And this is what I love about Carfax, is that you can really just go down the line and see this vehicle's entire life in a snapshot. Manufactured and shipped to original dealer in August of 1992. So this actually just turned 30 years old, right? 92, 2002, 2012, 2022. Just happy 30th birthday, Aerostar. California Motor Department. Okay, so 95. So 3 years on, it only had 1,400 miles on it, which, again, maybe it's had to be some sort of state vehicle, some sort of official vehicle where it just wasn't driven much. That would make sense for the specification, the vinyl seats. Manual transmission is just very weird, especially in extended. 1997, the car's 5 years old. It only has 2,200 miles on it. California Inspection Station. Vehicle service in 1999. Seems like it had its real first service, after being 7 years old, which says something for the reliability. Then again, your mileage is like nothing. Title issue or updated in 1999, 2001, 3,100 miles, 2003, 6,100 miles, so it did 3,000 in a couple of years. Okay, now 2004, 2005, this Aerostar went through it had a rough patch. Accident reported, vehicle involved in a rear-end collision with another motor vehicle in 2004. And then in 2005, less than a year later, accident reported involving front or side impact with another motor vehicle. Airbags did not deploy. So obviously this got fixed because there's no visible damage on the vehicle. It looks totally good. Now, in October of 2005, we have a mileage recording of 10,061 miles. All right. 2 years later, in 2007, we have a mileage reporting of 150,236. So after 13 years only accumulating 10,000 miles, all of a sudden in 1 year it accumulates 140,000 miles. That seems impossible. Why was that mileage reported? Very weird. 2007, vehicle service, computer system repaired after failing inspection in 2007, and then the vehicle passes inspection. In 2007, again with 150,241 miles, so just 5 miles more. 2009, 2 years later, this is the weird thing. Now it has 124,000 miles on it, which is so bizarre because it's still very mumuch higher than this 10,000 number, but now suddenly it's gone down by 26,000 miles. I would like to call this Elm Ford here and just ask if they have any records of this vehicle. Vehicle service, mileage inconsistency. The funny thing is when it jumps from 10,000 to 150,000, there's no mileage inconsistency, as if it's normal to drive, 140,000 miles and in 2 years. Now all of a sudden we have a mileage inconsistency. The little cute Carfax tells us that the mileage reported here conflicts with this vehicle's odometer history. Ask a mechanic or the seller to confirm the actual mileage. This entry may just be a clerical error. So maybe it went from 10,000 to 15,000, and they reported it wrong, and then again, now it's at, but I don't know how it gets to 124,000. It makes no sense to me. I guess if it was 15,000 and then it went to 24,000, because then in 2009 it's reported as 24,740, actually on the same date. So it's like they took 100,000 miles off of it. Maybe this 150,000 was wrong and it was actually 15,000. Then it went to 24,000, got reported as 124, and then went back to 24,700. I'm so confused. I don't know how these things work especially with digital odometers, how you change that. But something very, very strange. Okay, so title issuer updated, correction to record, maybe that means the mileage was reinstated. Now in 2011, we're up to 32,000 miles, pass inspection 2013. It only drove 800 miles in 2 years again. 2014, again, 200 miles. 2015, 33,762, 500 miles in a year. And then it comes to Ron Duprat Ford here in Dixon, California. Again, entire life in California, amazing. See how this thing just chugs along. 2015, 33,830, less than 100 miles. Well, that's only in a couple months, I guess. 2016, and then in 2017, 34,590. So again, other than this weird discrepancy, it seems like this van was barely driven. I mean, that's like, 30-year-old car. It's barely over 1,000 miles per year. 2018, 34,659, 34,769, 34,900, 34,992, and then 35,050. And then somehow it must have got bought in an auction from California and moved to Chicago, Illinois. Now it's funny that someone I wonder how much they paid for this, and I'd be interested to know how much they paid for that, because now they're selling it for almost $15,000. So funny that someone in Illinois would see this thing at an auction in California and be like, ooh, I can make money on that car. And but here it is somehow. The story of these Aerostars is just so amazing, we have a brief snapshot of it with that Carfax, but just, I wonder, how this was used, if it was like an official vehicle or something of that nature. Very, very strange. A very, very strange case. This certainly is a unique one. But, after all that, we have an extended, it looks like, if they got rear-ended or had side body damage, they sure did a nice job cleaning it up. I mean, it looks immaculate. Now is that maybe a tiny little dent here in the rear? I can't really tell. It might just be a shadow. But they've certainly done a wonderful job, whoever fixed it. Boy, with this little pinstripe molding on there, just wonderful. And a manual transmission, can you believe it? Now to me, this is one of the most desirable Aerostars just because it's so darn unique. Yeah, 92, I do like that year. I like that middle period, sort of like 92, 93. Now I have a 1993 Aerostar, which hopefully will be back in the shop soon. I like those years a lot. And then 94 through 97, that's sort of the golden years for the Aerostar. We'll deliver right to your door. That's interesting. Elite Auto Group. Now I'm wondering if this is actually a shipping company first and foremost, and they're just selling cars. I wonder if this car is actually still in California. That would be very interesting to know. Huh. Very interesting. We have a whole bevy of cars here. Wow, nice Audi Cabriolet. That's only $5,200. Whew. All right, I digress. Let's go back to our snapshot here. A very, very strange, wonderful, interesting, striking, unique Ford Aerostar 1992 extended with a manual transmission and a vinyl interior with crank windows. Oh, boy, this one really, these last two have really, sort of got my wheels turning, and I want to just dive deep and figure out the histories of these vehicles. But there you go. There's good ones to be had if you got a little bit more money to spend and you want some, more classic Aerostar that's been a little bit more well preserved, a little bit lower mileage, and has a little bit more flair to it, or just a little bit less work to make it, perfect. There's some options out there for you. So, Thanks so much for watching, as always, here on Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar. And until next time, Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.